you had an interesting note about a half hour ago on Twitter at Albert Breer talking about Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson being selective. The Patriots or the Bears, you say. Tell us more.
Yeah, so, I mean, like, he has at least made the tentative decision that he's going to take those interviews. And that's great news for those two teams because and I said this before, and I think I told you guys a month ago. I'm sure you guys saw me before I think it was the Lions-Packers Thursday night game where, I laid out some of the parameters I think Ben's going to have for wherever he winds up. And, that's he wants alignment with the general manager. He wants an ownership group that's willing to admit its mistakes. And that he wasn't going to go on some sort of world tour of interviewing. This wasn't going to be like it was the last couple of years. He was only going to enter into an interview process if he felt like I legitimately could take this job, and that's why I think, like, to be honest, the Jags thing is really iffy, because I don't know that he's going to want to work with Trent Baalke, you know what I mean? Like, so I think, in taking the interview with the Bears, taking the interview with the Patriots, he's showing that he at least likes the way things are set up, or at least can work with the way things are set up in those places. And, then I think for him, it's going to be going into the interview room and saying to these teams, like, this is my vision, this is how I see it set up, and seeing if the teams buy into that vision.
In terms of Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles, there had been this narrative out there, but there's no way if they don't fire Ryan Poles, he's not coming to Chicago. And I was told by someone exceptionally close to Ben, he said, that's not true. He has to sit down and see if they can have commonality, and if they don't, that's a problem. But he said if they have commonality, he has zero problem with that guy.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I think there's a difference between, like, New England and Chicago, where they are right now in Jacksonville, right? Like, New England and Chicago both have young – I'll call Elliott Wolf a general manager, even though he doesn't have the title. They have young general managers that are still learning the job. And, I don't think, like, Ben had – I don't want to speak for anybody, but I don't think, like the idea of going and working with somebody you may not have the closest relationship with yet would be a huge problem. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's something you can work with. I think, I'm just looking at Jacksonville. This is my own perception of it. But, I mean, wouldn't any coach be sort of, weary about, like, what exists down there right now? You know what I mean? Like, if that's a clean sweep, that's a really attractive job. You know what I mean? Like, I think somebody like Ben would be really interested in it. Like, if it's like, all right, we're going to bring in a new general manager, we're going to bring in a new head coach, we're going to match those two together, we're going to put them on matching contracts, and, like, we're going to go. You know what I mean? Like, and you're going to be able to build to our existing core, and the owner's been patient there in the past with people, and they have a quarterback and all of that. Like, so that'd be attractive. But if Trent Baalke's there, look at his track record. I mean, he got both his general manager jobs after his boss got fired, right? In San Francisco, he survived the firings of Mike Singletary, Jim Harbaugh, and Jim Tomsula. And then, in Jacksonville, he's now survived the firings of Doug Marrone, Urban Meyer, and Doug Peterson. What does that tell you?
Yeah. Well,
I mean, seriously, like, you think about that. Like, what does that tell you? I mean, I don't know. Like, and then you see the infighting with the coaches that happened with that front office in Jacksonville. I'd be freaking really. I mean, look, like, it's 1 of 32, so they're going to find somebody. But, there are going to be a lot of coaches that would be really leery about, the way things operate down there. And I think coaches for coaches with options, it'll almost be a non-starter.
Albert, of all the openings, many say that the Bears, is the best job. But then I look at the infrastructure of the NFC North and just how the Vikings and the Packers and the Lions operate. I mean, how much of an undertaking would this be for anybody that takes this job?
It's tough, and I think that is definitely part of the equation, but wouldn't you have said that, like, I mean, I don't know, like, I like to look at, like, if the Raiders job comes open, it's sort of the same thing over there, right? So, like, the Raiders job, you'd be competing against the The Chargers with Jim Harbaugh now, the Broncos with Sean Payton now, and then, of course, the Chiefs with Andy Reid. Seahawks last year, I think the Seahawks was a really attractive job. Now, that comes with the caveat that you're going to be dealing with two coaches who have been to Super Bowls, right? And, both those coaches have been to Super Bowls with multiple quarterbacks. Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan both got into Super Bowls with multiple quarterbacks, which is pretty incredible if you think about it. But that Seahawks job was still attractive. Well, why was it attractive? It was attractive because you have supportive ownership. You have, an established way of doing things. I think that job was attractive for a ton of reasons, and so I think the environment you're going into is part of it. But if you can present something where it's like, we're going to give you a good roster, we're going to give you resources, we're going to give you the support of ownership, we're going to give you time, we're going to give you a front office that you can work with, then, I think the competition you're up against is not like it's a non-factor, but it can be secondary, because you'll have this ability to build something in your own vision. I always think that's most important. It's like you spend, whatever, it's 15, 20, 25 years coming up in the business trying to form this vision of what you want to build, right? And, really, I think for most coaches that are out there and on the market, the most important thing is, like, what place can give me the best chance to actually realize that vision, to bring together that vision. And there are some that obviously have, give you the ability to do that, and there are others that don't.
All right, ponder this while we take a quick break. Albert Breer is with us. He is awesome. Amazon Prime, Monday morning quarterback at SI.com. Mike Vrabel is coming to Chicago tomorrow to interview with the Bears.
Yep.
DeMarcus Walker said he'd clean up a lot of the bull you-know-what in our locker room from day one. That was yesterday. 2, everyone thinks it's a done deal for the Patriots. Kevin Byard said, that guy, he comes in day one and everything's different.
Yeah, and I think it would be a great thing for Caleb Williams, too, because what Mike will do if he comes in there is build a team that is not going to ask the world of the quarterback. I think it's sort of similar to Jim Harbaugh in some ways. Like, I felt like when he took the Chargers job, he would get more out of Justin Herbert by asking less of him. And that's exactly what happened, And so I think in a lot of ways, like, a coach who comes in, and I know it sounds counterintuitive, but a coach like Mike Vrabel coming in would be able to do that. Now you'd need his plan for offense and what he's going to do and who's going to come and run the offense, whether it's somebody like Tommy Rees coming from the Browns. Maybe it's Josh McDaniels, whoever it is. Like, you're going to need his plan for the offensive side of the ball. But the way I look at it, guys, I think this is an opportunity for the Bears to win this. You know what I mean? Like, I think Mike, as much as everybody's pointing to New England, and I think New England is probably the most likely destination, I think Mike's going into this with an open mind. And, I think he's going to want, alignment with the front office based on everything that happened. Like, he's going to want an owner he can trust. Again, based on everything that happened to him in Tennessee, like, those are non-negotiables. But if he can get there, I think that he would look at it and say, I'm from the Midwest. This is like an iconic franchise in the Midwest. I think the history of the Bears would appeal to him. There's a young quarterback there. I can build aggressively. I've got some defensive pieces. This is a team that's close to being able to compete. And I think he'd be a great fit for the city, too. I don't know how much you guys have paid attention to him, been around him, but I think he'd be a phenomenal fit. Like, he looks like a Bears coach.
Somebody said to me, that restaurant that is empty, Hoodie and I have been there, it's called Magnum's, and it's gone.
Yeah.
The building is still there. It's empty. Before that, it was Ditka's. They said, dude, if Mike Vrabel comes there and wins like I think he will, that'll be his restaurant right there. The city would love him.
Yeah, well, he would be. I mean, I really believe this, guys. Like, knowing him, and I covered him as a player, and I like that Chicago would wrap its arms around him. Like, he is perfect for the city of Chicago. So, I think it's sort of, as much as he's interviewing for the job, I think, it's on the Bears to put their best foot forward too. And the cool thing is there is some background and symmetry there. Now, I don't want to overstate like a relationship between Ryan Poles and Mike Vrabel. Because I think, Ryan was still like a scouting assistant when Mike was a player there. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not like there's this like meaningful time that they spent together in Kansas City, but they were there together. And Ryan Poles has history in Scott Pioli's scouting system. Well, that's Mike Vrabel's scouting system. That's the system they ran in Tennessee with John Robinson, when John Robinson was the GM there. So just as far as like how you see players, how you grade players, Ryan Poles has already done it. You know what I mean? Like that was his first job in the NFL, was working under Scott Pioli. And so like there's some background there where I do think like you could line it up and say like this would actually be a really good fit if Poles and Vrabel can get along and get on the same page in the interview and kind of talk about how that vision would come together. I thought from the start, guys, like I really like, and I know everybody's been talking about Ben, and I think Ben would work there for a number of reasons too. But just as far as like if you're talking about like a city, like fitting a coach, like I think Vrabel would be a phenomenal fit for the city of Chicago.
Why did Vrabel and Tennessee part ways?
I think it was a number of different things. Like I think if you ask the Titan side of it, like he had become a little bit too powerful there. And, I think like there was a feeling like, is he walking all over everybody in the building? Now, what Mike would tell you in response to that, I think, would be, well, ask my players. My players played for me. You saw a style of play. Like my players, without question, were responding to my coaching all the way through, even when the talent wasn't very good at the end. I think this is just an ownership decision, and I think what happens oftentimes in these situations, she wasn't around all the time. Like she lives in Amy Adams Strunk lives in Texas and would come in, every so often for home games, that sort of thing. And I think she had hired some people the year before. There was some disagreement on who was going to be the next general manager. She loved Vrabel, and I think as there were some bumps in merging what Mike was doing with the new front office or remade front office, that didn't quite match up, and so I know it surprised a lot of people there and kind of fell out of nowhere when she came in and fired him that day. So I don't think anybody there would say like that Mike wore out his welcome or was horrible to people in there. In fact, like I would tell you this, I know some people in the scouting department there that still love him that would go with him if he wound up landing in Chicago, New England, wherever else. Jets. There are still people in Tennessee who would 100% follow him, which I think does undermine the idea that he was this, monster who no one could work with in Tennessee.
So just so I get you correct, you think he is a perfect fit for this city. If you were the Bears GM, is that who you'd hire?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I like just going on track record, you know what I mean? Like, and you've had, how many first-time head coaches in a row now? When was the last time they hired somebody who had head coaching experience? I don't know.
John Fox.
John Fox. There you go. I forgot about Foxy. Can't forget Foxy.
That's it.
But they haven't really done it much. You know what I mean? Like, so if you're talking about somebody who can come in and change the face of the organization, and I've said this before, and I think Ben's a good leader too. You know what I mean? Like, so don't get me wrong here. I think Ben's a really good candidate. Part of this is going to be going through the process, but I do think that this job, they haven't won a playoff game in 15 years. I think this job is about more than coaching and developing one guy. I think it's about somebody who's going to be able to come in and like have the leverage and the stomach to say no to ownership on things, to tell ownership where they've been wrong on certain things, to really sort of steer the ship away from the iceberg. You know what I mean? Like, and I think Vrabel has a very clear vision of what he wants in a football team and what he's looking for in a football team and what his football teams would look like. And you can see it. They went to an AFC Championship game with Ryan Tannehill. Look at Derrick Henry's numbers before Mike Vrabel got there. Kevin Byard, I think, would tell you, he had his best years playing for Mike. There are a lot of guys who can say that. You know what I mean? He's a guy who's capable of coaching every position on the field. You saw it this year. He coached offense and in Cleveland. He worked with the tight ends and then later worked with the offensive line. He understands game situations, game management. I mean, he just knows what he wants it to look and feel like. And again, like, he's been able to maximize players all over the place, including, by the way, a quarterback. It's hard to argue that, right? Would you say he maximized Ryan Tannehill?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I think like, if I'm the Bears, like, I mean, again, Ben's up there, and I think Ben's a really good candidate. There's a reason why Vrabel's the guy everybody wants to talk to.
Albert Breer with us every Tuesday at 8:35. More on the Bears coaching search in 2 minutes on Kap and J Hood, presented by ESPN Bet.